Hello, everyone. Welcome to the permanent makeup training. In this section, we're going to deep dive into introduction of permanent makeup, some foundational knowledge of PMU. These knowledge is pretty much the backbone of permanent makeup, whether you'll be doing lips, brows, or eyeliner, or even tiny tattoo. These are foundational knowledge that you should know in order to perform your permanent makeup. So now let's get started. So where would you start? Number one, you're going to go through the online training to learn all the theory, which is what we're doing right now. And if you are enrolled in my hands-on training, whether it's for brows, nano, or lips, please finish this online training along with the foundation of brow training and the actual brow modules as well. So finish all of your online training before you come in for the in-person training. Now, if you are a new artist and only enroll in online training, I do wanted to let you know that this online training is not meant to substitute your hands-on training. The reason is because the in-person training provides that hand-in-hand guidance where I would have more time to actually hold your hand, watch you, and kind of like troubleshoot and help you develop your skills. Now, if you're doing it yourself, which you probably will be doing later, you will notice that you run into, some problems like, okay, well, maybe your hand pressure isn't right or your movement isn't quite correct. So that's where your in-person training comes in to the picture, is for me to be able to be there and help guide you. So the online training is not meant to substitute the whole hands-on training program. And the last but not least, practice. Like the old saying, always say practice is key. So after your online training and then after your hands-on training, you will learn how to execute the procedure correctly. But in order for you to create beautiful work, you need to continue to practice on your own, whether it's on latex or on people like friends and family or even clients. That's how we get better. Just like if you paint or play a musical instrument, the more you play that instrument, the better you're going to get. Or like you're going to the gym, if you want to develop that muscles, you need to put in time to work out, right? So same concept. This is all about muscle memory. The more you do it, the better you will get. Next, after you get your training, you need to get your license. But before you get your license, you need to get your bloodborne pathogen test done. It's an online training where I have the website listed right here that you can go into to get your test done. This test is done annually, so you need to do it once a year to renew. And it's literally the same test over and over and over. Depending on what state you're in, certain state, the test is like a little bit more than the other. For example, if you reside in California, like LA, you want to make sure you click in the LA section, or if you're in Florida, you want to make sure you click into like the Florida link. Okay. And after you take the test, you need to contact your health department. This is where you're going to fill out the application to apply for tattoo license. Every state is going to be different. For example, in Arizona, there's no license in terms of tattooing, so it's pretty easy. But if you're in Florida, the rules and regulations will be different than in LA. LA will be different than in Orange County. So California is a little bit tricky, where LA and Orange County are divided into like separate in terms of like rules and regulations. So you want to double check. So all you need to do is I can show you here. Go into Google. Okay, I'm going to create a new window. So google.com. For example, if you're in Florida, right? So Florida Health Department tattoo license. So you can literally just type this. And then you're going into the floridahealth.gov. Click on the link, and here it is. Okay, so for example, if you need to apply for a new license, you're gonna pay the $60, and then you're going to turn in a copy of your photo ID, and then a copy of your bloodborne pathogen, and then a certificate of completion, and then mail it. Now, some county might be easier where you can just apply online. Certain places you have to mail. So you want to make sure, just go into Google, type in tattoo license state and the city, and it will pop up for you. After you apply for licensing, look into insurance. Again, every state is different, every place is different. If you work for a salon, check with the owner to see if they have insurance cover for you. If not, then you might want to look for your own insurance. If you are not working for a salon, if you want to go into like your own business or location, then finding a location ahead of time is more helpful. My recommendation is I would recommend you to work for a salon or someone if you're new, just to like get started before you have your own studio, because you need to be able to have at least about 2 to 3 years of experience in PMU before you have like a stable business. So that's just my recommendation. But of course, everything depends on you. Like, let's say if you already have an established large clientele and you're just literally converting those clients into doing PMU, then that's a different story. But if you have any questions, I'm available. You can reach out to me anytime. And last but not least, practice. Try to do as many people as you can. If you've had an established clientele already, that's a bonus for you, because you can literally practice on those clients who you have already built trust for a long time. And in your downtime, please try your best to practice on latex to perfect your skills even more. We already talked about licensing earlier. State law, this link is available for you on the online training portal. You can click on it to see what is the requirement of each state. All right, moving on to infection control. Now, this section I list here just on like some important points, but all of this module is actually the same as the OSHA when you're taking your bloodborne pathogen online test. So it's literally kind of like the same thing. After you complete your bloodborne pathogen test, you will learn and know everything about infection control. But some of the important things is, when it comes to sanitation, like your work area cannot have carpet. If you have carpet, you want to make sure that you put like a plastic or like a hard surface over something that you can wipe clean after each procedure. This is just, for sanitary purposes. And then depending on your state, your health department will require like hot and cold running water maybe. And then your tattoo bed needs to have a barrier wrap or bed rolls to change after each client. And the barrier film would need to be, like on the trolley, light, bed, tattoo machines, and so on. All your needles, razors, and sharps would need to be disposed in a sharp container. And then the sharp container will be picked up by the medical waste management. Like I think it's like once a month. Again, each state is different on that, so you want to check with your local. If you want to read more about this, please download the booklet that I included in the online training. The reason that we want to make sure it's sanitized is to prevent cross-contamination. So things that you could be like touching while you're working on clients, you want to be super careful on that. Foundation of PMU. These are foundational knowledge. Why do we call semi-permanent makeup instead of permanent makeup? PMU is back in the days when people were still doing tattoo on the face. It's permanent makeup because back in the days they used to use the tattoo ink to tattoo on the face. So therefore it's considered to be permanent. Nowadays, as the PMU industry evolves, the pigment industry also evolves. So now they actually create pigments that is specifically just for the cosmetic procedures. And these pigments uh, don't last as long. And also with today's techniques, we don't go as deep as the tattoo. So therefore, it's semi. And when we're saying semi, it could last for any time between 3 to 5 years. When we're talking about machines, it's important for you to understand what types of machines out there in the market. This is just so that you have a good knowledge of what to buy and what not to buy. Because when I first started, I honestly ended up buying literally like everything, like every machine that I saw, like I literally kind of just bought them because no one really taught me the foundation knowledge of machines, and this is just kind of like the knowledge that I accumulated over the years through reading from certain sources, kind of like trial and errors, and then after spending tons of money on like different machines, I just kind of like found out. So when we're talking about machines in permanent makeup, there is actually like the machines that has the motor, and then there's manual. Manual you probably already heard of microblading. Microblading, people actually don't use machine, they use just the manual tool. We'll talk about that later. So types of machines in permanent makeup, the OG is the coil machine, and this is for actually like tattooing, body tattoo procedure back in the days. Even nowadays, tattoo artists don't really use coil machines as much anymore because it's old fashioned, it's heavy, it lacks, like other newer functions that newer machines could offer. So not many people use coil machines anymore. And it's strictly just for the traditional tattoo procedures. The second type that is very popular right now is the rotary machine, and rotary machine is universal. The rotary machine comes in two types. It's wired and it's also wireless. Okay. If you get the wired rotary machine, you would need I think it's the RCA cord with a power source. Now, when you buy a power source, it is also universal. So what that means is that you can buy any power source that plugs into any of the rotary machine and vice versa. With rotary machine, you can use for both procedures, tattooing and PMU. And it works with all universal needles as well. The wireless rotary machine also serves the same thing as the common general rotary machine wired. The only difference is that the wireless, since it's powered by the battery, so with the capability of the battery, it can only go down to certain voltage, or it can only go up to certain voltage. If you're working within that range, it might be okay. But if you're working with certain procedures that requires your machine to perform at certain voltage that the wireless can't, then you would need to use the wire. For example, the Mass Tour Amy. This one is the hybrid one that comes with the battery as well as the wired. So you can actually use it with the battery, or take out the battery and plug it into the power source right here, and it can go really low or it can go very high. This is my favorite machine that I have been using for quite a few years now. And I use this machine for pretty much all procedures, brows, lips, eyeliner. This is a very versatile machine that is it's very cost effective, but at the same time you get really good quality. Now, obviously, there are so many other types of rotary machines out there that as you embark on this journey, you probably will try different types of machines later. The last type is digital machine. Digital machine comes with also their own power source that looks kind of like a little screen right here, and they tend to look very nice. They don't look heavy like the rotary machine. However, the digital machines can only be used for PMU procedures. The motor is not as fast, it's not as powerful as rotary machine. And if you buy the digital machine, you want to make sure that you buy their own needle as well, because each machine will have their own needle. So that's one of also the cons, is that you can't just buy any universal cartridge like needle cartridge like the rotary machine. You have to buy their own specific needle if you work with like a digital machine or a digital pen. Digital pen is technically it's the same thing as the digital machine, but it's just wireless. And the wireless digital pen, again, the motor is very weak, and it's powered by a battery, so it usually has very limited speed. It usually only comes with like maybe 3 to 5 different speeds. And if you buy their digital machines, then you want to make sure you buy their own needle as well. So I guess those two are the biggest cons for me, is that number one, the machine is very weak. Number two, you can't work with other types of needle, and digital needles are not as sharp either. So digital machines mainly for like super new beginner. Moving on to needles knowledge. Needle knowledge comes in helpful when you want to buy or test different types of needle. Then obviously you need to understand the types of needles there are, right? So this is the digital needle that I mentioned just now. This is just one type. Obviously, there are other types as well that might look different. This is needle cartridges. This is very universal, pretty much. Other needle cartridges also look like this and work with any rotary machine. When you buy your needle, on the box, there's always like a label, or when you buy the needle online, you're gonna need to choose the type of needles and configurations of needles and stuff like that. So it's important for you to understand what each numbers mean, so that way you would be able to work with certain types of needles. So on the label, there's always like two numbers, two sets of numbers and like letters. So the first set, see that 12 right here, it stands for diameter. Okay, so the diameter of the needle means how thick the tip of the needle is. If you're in lashes, think of it like volume and classic. Volume is like 0.06, 0.05 millimeter, 0.03 millimeter, and so on. Same thing with needle concept when it comes to diameter, right? There is 0.25 millimeter, 0.30 millimeter, 0.35, and so on. The numbers on the top here, honestly, that's just an old way of saying the diameter of the needle, like back in the days in tattooing. They used to say, let's say 0.30 millimeter is a 10. Okay, so when somebody say 10, then you know that is 0.30 millimeter. Nowadays, we kind of use both terminologies, but it's important for you to like know what each numbers represent, like of the diameter. Now, keep in mind that the diameter of the needles will affect the ink flow. So the smaller the needle, the finer and more controlled your ink is, the flow of ink, okay? Therefore, smaller needles will have finer ink flow, and it's obviously more suitable for finer work, for PMU work. The larger the diameter, the more ink flow there's gonna be. And also the diameter affects the size of the puncture it made onto the skin. So think of it like little dots in different sizes. Smaller diameter will create more smooth and gradients, kind of like this. Whereas the larger the dots, you can actually see the dots. So this is the 12, remember, this is 0.35 millimeter. The 10 is 0.30. The 8 is 0.25, right? So see how at each sample right here, the dots are created differently. When you go into each of the modules later, for brows or lips or eyeliner, we will be using different diameters for different procedures. The next set of the numbers on the box here, right here, is the needle count. So when it say 03, that means there are 3 needles in the group, okay, like so. So you see like there are 3 dots, so this means that there are 3 needles, right? If it says 5, then you can see like 5 dots. If it says 7, there are 7 little needles grouped into like a cartridge. The more the needles, the more of the numbers of the needles, the faster the work is going to be. But that also means that the less control you will have with your work. The next number, I'm sorry, not the number, but the letters. If you see RL right here, that means this is the type of the needle. So RL means round liner. If you see RS, it means round shader. And as you can see that the liner, each of the needle is grouped more close. Whereas the shade with the shader, the needles are grouped loosely. And you know, the more loose the needles are grouped, the less, how do I say it? Like the less it's going to like have implantation onto the skin because it already has too much gaps in between the needles. Okay, so the result would be like more sheer. When you're using this needle, you don't see much pigment going into the skin because each of the needle is grouped further apart. Magnum is the type of needles that have 2 rows. Okay, 2 rows of the needles. Curved magnum is also the type a type of needle that has 2 rows, but as you can see, it's curved. because it's combined with shorter needles in between the longer needles. Flat just means that they lay flat in a row, like they lay in a row like this with the little gaps in between. Slope is like this, where we see more in like the microblading blades. In PMU, we only use RL, RS. Some people nowadays use nano brows with Magnum, but honestly, these are pretty hard to use. But the most common is the RL and RS. I use just RL. I don't use RS. I only use RS in tiny tattoo if I need to shade. The last letters are the tapers. So if you see right here where it says ST, is the taper of the needle. Okay, so the longer the needle, the longer the taper of the needles, okay, the more sharp it's going to be, the finer point is going to be. Okay, the taper also affects the ink flow. Longer taper will have slower rate and less ink flow. It's just more controlled. The shorter taper will have faster ink flow, but then it also means that because the ink flow is a lot faster, so it's going to have like the dots is going to be like a little more bold because the way it punctures into the skin. As you can see, imagine if it's like thin and skinny, it goes in and out very quickly without leaving marks, right? But if it's short and like big, like right here at the body, then when it goes in and out, it leaves marks in the body, yeah, in the area, right? So that's why it can make the dots appear as if they're thicker. And depending on what procedures you're working with, brows, lips, and eyeliner, we're going to use like different types. For me, generally, I only use long taper and extra long taper. I don't use short or medium taper in my PMU work. Manual blades are the blades that you pluck into one of these pen right here, like the manual tool that I mentioned with you earlier. We pluck it in like this to use. So this is the microblading pen holder, and you plug the needle into the pen on the side like this. And the theory of the blades also is the same as the needle, the type. The only difference is that it doesn't really have the round liner or round shader. Like it doesn't have where is it? The configuration. Okay, and it doesn't really have the tapered either. It only comes in needle count and different diameters.